Y'all are in for such a treat. I just heard our guest speaker in the other class, and she is a great speaker and knows so much about what she's talking about. You're going to be convinced that PR is the field for you after this, or that PR isn't the field for you. I told you the story already about how Ms. Rutherford came to be here, that I was teaching this class this summer, and mentioned Southwest dealing with the film director's tweets. And Stuart Johnson here raised his hand and said, "I know her." And I kiddingly said, "Well, get her to speak." Well, darn if she didn't take us up on it. So Stuart is going to introduce Ms. Rutherford, but I am just thrilled that she's here, and I know y'all are going to be. So Stuart Johnson, graduate of this class, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay. Well, just as Ms. Street said about Ms. Rutherford, she is Vice President of Communications and Strategic Outreach to the Dallas-based airline, Southwest Airlines. A little bit about what she covers in her area is just like what we're learning here in 391, especially in 491, because I took it this summer, and it's the exact, she does exactly what we're learning, from media relations to community relations, charitable givings, to public relations, of course, to social media, and graphic design and creative services, just what all is in PR. And I thought it'd be very nice to hear it from a real professional like Ms. Rutherford. And I was blown away even just in 391, just from what I was learning from her. But a little bit more about Ms. Rutherford. Before her tenure at Southwest Airlines, she joined in 1992, but before that she was a reporter for several Dallas-based newspapers within the city, all over. But she began her career at Newsweek magazine in New York. Ms. Rutherford is alumni to Texas Tech, where she was a 2009 inductee to the Texas Tech College of Mass Communications Hall of Fame. She was a 2008 inductee into PR News Public Relations Hall of Fame. PR Weekly has recognized Southwest Airlines as one of the 5 companies that get social media. PR News has named their blog, Nuts About Southwest Airlines, the best corporate blog for 2007, 2008, and 2009. And PR Week has named Southwest Airlines Corporate Communications Department PR Team of the Year in the year 2000. So with all that Ms. Rutherford does within her department, she does reside in Dallas with her husband, Michael, and 2 kids, Allison and Matt. So without any ado.
Thank you.
I'm going to dim the light.
Okay, how's everybody doing? Good. Thank you for coming out on a rainy afternoon. What you really wanted to do was stay curled up in bed. Appreciate it. We're going to spend the next 45 minutes to an hour just kind of talking about communication in terms of how Southwest Airlines does it, how we have recently changed some things we're doing, and maybe what that means for you all who are considering a career in communication. Because you're an advanced class, you probably have lots of great questions, so I really would love it if we could kind of keep this a little bit informal. If I say something that spawns a question, if you would just raise your hand, I'd love to be able to just address it right then and there, because to get the most value out of today, you want to pick my brain. You don't need to hear everything that I have to say. You want to pick my brain. So please feel free to do that and just interrupt so that I can address your question, please. What I am here to tell you a little bit about today are some of the changes that the communication department has undergone in the last year. I said to the last class I spoke to that as long as you are a passionate, lifelong learner, you will be great at communication, because you're going to learn something different every week that you're on the job, or when you're working for a company or a firm or a nonprofit. When I graduated from Texas Tech in 1988, we had just learned how to put a story on a computer, write stories on computers. So we had electric typewriters that we were writing our news stories on, and then when we were working in communication, it was about writing a news release. How to write a really good news release so that the New York Times will want to pick it up and do a great story on your company or your organization. When you fast forward to what communication looks like today, in terms of the power of word of mouth, how to create dialogues about a brand, how to use the online space in a communication strategy, so many things happening in communication. So you've got to enjoy, I think, the dynamic nature of communication, because you're always going to be learning something new. Right now we feel like we've got a really good thing going in our communication strategy with our Twitter strategy and our Facebook strategy and our blogging strategy, but we're already looking at how can we use geolocation to Southwest Airlines' benefit. I mean, we take people all over the country, so might that be an opportunity for us? So you're going to constantly be discovering. And that's the great part. That's what I love about my job. So I'm going to talk about what we call communications convergence at Southwest Airlines. And you get a little backstage pass today to kind of learn a little bit more about how Southwest Airlines kind of, pull open the kimono and look behind the scenes at some things that we did in order to be able to be ready to meet sort of what the new demands were for communication. So we had 3 departments. I have a lot of departments, as Stuart talked about, in communication, but if I just look at the communication side of my department, I had 3 different siloed groups. I had one group that was completely focused on internal messaging to our employees. I had one group that was completely focused on event planning and media relations and public relations, and I had yet another group that was working on our Facebook and our blogging and our Twitter strategy. And they were all working independently. So my words, what they really were more of were channel managers. They were managing and pushing content to a particular channel. But what was happening internally and externally and online wasn't always married. And so that was an opportunity for us to think about this differently. So as you think about your career and like, what do I want to go do in communication? One of the things that we're doing, and a number of other companies are looking at this, Allstate Communication is one that's looking at it, as well as Target. But they're looking at taking their communications departments and kind of doing a mashup, if you will, putting the internal, external, and online people all together as a department, and then helping each other stretch skills. So if I'm the guy that talks to the New York Times, you're going to have to help me learn how to create an internal communication, right? That's a skill you're going to have to learn. If I'm the Twitter girl, so anybody who follows Southwest Airlines knows Christy Day with Southwest Airlines, getting her to do some event planning for media relations. Anybody who writes for our employee magazine, teaching them how to put on a media event. Really working at stretching some different skills. And then, more than anything, it's about, I might not get extra headcount, I might not get to grow my department, but if I need more people available to know how to do more things, one of the ways I'm going to get at that is through the convergence that we're currently undergoing. Because I'm going to step back and I'm going to create more project managers than channel managers. I'm going to create I'm going to get folks who can create a strategy for X announcement, for instance, the AirTran integration that we just announced. So I was able to get 2 or 3 people together who were able to work on message strategy and then figure out, once we knew what the message wanted to be, then, okay, well, what's the Twitter message going to look like? What's the Facebook message going to look like? What's the news release going to be? How do I want to write a speech for the CEO? So message first, channel second, which is a little bit different than how we were previously organized. There's an opportunity that we realized when we weren't working in silos anymore that, okay, well, if I'm doing a news event and I was in the mode of write a news release, call the news media, tell them about it, well, now wait a minute, there's a whole set of online influencers that we could tap into to be a voice for us. So for instance, again, with the AirTran acquisition announcement, we had a list of 15 people who are very prolific in the online space. Cranky Flyer, Brett Snyder, Mary Kirby Runway Girl, Vaughn Cordell. There were a lot of people who have really loud online voices. And we blended them into the strategy so that at the same time we were issuing the news release, we had several of our senior officers who were making personal phone calls to those online influencers. Number 1, to alert them to the news. Number 2, to give them that special touch. And number 3, to answer any questions that they had, because we knew they'd be talking about the deal. And we had an opportunity to influence how they positioned the deal or what they said about it. Obviously using our online social channels to be able to tease news, being able to utilize our media database. We use a database called Vocus, and it allows us to blend our social media contacts and our traditional media contacts all into one list if we want. And it can actually rank them by the size of their audience. So now I'm going to take you into a couple of different ways in which we, as a converged department, a couple of different case studies of what that kind of looks like. So, well, we call it kind of taking turns as the lead singer. Remember, I'm bringing online and internal and external folks together. So now that means that everybody's getting a chance to sort of flex those different kinds of muscles. PR spokespeople create content for both internal and online communications. The employee communications folks who are used to writing for the daily newsletter and the monthly magazine were getting to be work at a much faster pace, being able to plan sort of those events that were happening, and also to help facilitate media interviews. And then our emerging media team members were getting to do a lot more planning of special events and getting involved in the media relations side of the business. So how's that look? The first thing that we did was we have a blog externally called Nuts About Southwest. We've got about 1.2 million Twitter followers. We've got close to 1 million Facebook fans. So we've got a really robust two-way communication outside the walls of Southwest. Where we were not as robust is inside the walls at Southwest. We had a daily newsletter where we pushed information out, and you got to, as an employee, read it and hopefully understand it. We didn't know because we didn't ask, and there wasn't two-way communication. So it's kind of like that one-way communication, very static stories that we put up there every day, and it wasn't always as timely. In other words, it came out at the same time every day. So whether we announced some new thing at 10 o'clock in the morning or 4 o'clock in the afternoon, the way you found out about it was in tomorrow's newsletter. And what we went to was something called SWA Life Interactive. So this is our intranet inside the walls, but it changed completely. So it changed to a blog where we can post multiple news stories a day. So as soon as the news happens, we're able to launch it. The ability to comment. Our employees can comment back to us. You know, I hate this thing we just did, which could happen, or love that, you know, here's the question that I have. It gives us real-time feedback right away to what our 35,000 employees are thinking and feeling. Do they get it? And we'll know right away if they get it based on the employee interaction and the questions that they're asking. If they're like, way to go, this is fantastic, okay, everybody's got that, message received, they understand it, they know what to do. If there's a lot of churn in these comments, we know it's an opportunity to readdress a particular issue. An example of that was, our CEO did a blog where he talked about an opportunity. Anybody know what code sharing is? It's when two airlines can actually share flights and prices, and you might think you're flying on Delta, but maybe you're actually flying on another airline. It's a way to sort of extend your route network. We don't really do that. We've been known to do marketing alliances with companies. For instance, we just announced one last week where we're going to code share, have a marketing alliance with a company, a Mexican airline called Volaris. Well, our CEO wrote a note in the blog saying this is an exciting opportunity, and right away, all the pilots wrote in and said, we hate this idea because that's going to limit our growth. If you're going to code share with other airlines, then you're taking away the opportunity for us to someday fly there ourselves. Interesting. So that isn't what we intended, and that's not the plan, but that gave Gary Kelly, our CEO, right away real-time feedback of, oh, they don't really get where I'm trying to go with the strategy. This is an interim step to allow us to grow and get additional revenue until we're ready to fly those flights ourselves. And so it was an opportunity for him to come back in and readdress that. Over here, we launched we call it our television, our internal television network called SWA TV, Southwest Airlines TV. And we launched a weekly news show on it called The Window Seat. And so every Friday morning, there's a little 6-minute show on there. We rotate the anchors every week, and they kind of give you a recap of the news. You know, we found video, as I'm sure you guys have talked about too, to be a very powerful tool in our storytelling strategy. So people can sit still for 6 minutes, and if they're willing to do that to get the whole news of the week, and we can get it all in 6 minutes, then we've done a great job educating our employees and making sure that they're on board with whatever it was we needed to announce. But a whole new environment to kind of bring some of our internal communications tools up to speed to what we were doing externally. We've talked about this, so it's our news clip feed, which is our blog. We're able to present content in either a video, a blog, or a podcast. We have something called Red Belly Radio. We're able to bring in photos, so we allow our employees to upload photos, which we show as part of our photo feed. So second example, did that show? Oh, this is my PC to Mac translation problem. Bummer. There's a picture of a bunch of guys bare-chested up here, and you can't see it. Dang. Okay. Well, there you go. I'll explain it to you. What you don't see here. Has anybody seen our commercials where the guys kind of raise their chests up and it's painted bags fly free on there if you watch any sports events? Okay, so what we did at our shareholders meeting was our marketing department was obviously using our ramp agents very heavily in our commercials as we were talking about Bags Fly Free. The online environment started talking a whole lot about how cool these guys were, and rampers aren't normally somebody you would interact with as a customer because they're down on ramp and they're loading bags and they just don't have customer contact. Yet here they were on a commercial during your sports team that you were watching, and it was like all of a sudden, wow, they have personalities. Look who these guys are. We brought them into our shareholders meeting in May, and as our CEO was getting up to talk about the success of sort of zigging while the industry zagged. In other words, we decided we weren't going to charge fees while the rest of the airline industry decided they were going to. And these guys ran up the middle of the shareholders meeting, turned around and bared their chests to everybody who was at the annual shareholders meeting and said our success is because Bags Fly Free, which was painted on their chest. So that's what you didn't get to see. Oh! There you go. It's like magic. I said it and it happened. These guys really are, and what's cool about the advertising campaign too is these really are our employees. Anything you see on television for Southwest Airlines, those are our employees. So the latest ones of kind of the Glee takeoff where they're running up the subway and they're playing the guitar and singing and dancing, that's really them. So extraordinarily talented group of people. These guys are ramp agents all over our system though, and really good personalities. So we decided, I wonder if this will play. Ooh, it might, yeah. We think it will, Robin?
All we're seeing is a black square.
But it's got a finger. Maybe not. Option what? Option? It won't do it? Okay, that's fine. I was going to show you a video from when they did it, but it was an opportunity to take what is typically our advertising and marketing message, put it into what is a financially driven day with shareholders, but we got some great media and online buzz as a result because it wasn't what people were expecting at the shareholders meeting when you were talking about pro forma earnings and results and all of that. And it was a great opportunity, once again, to tell the Southwest story, but in a way that was very authentic to our irreverent personality. So we did all of these things that day, and we're able to use, so our strategy on Shareholders Day, our message strategy was demonstrate the success of Bags Fly Free, demonstrate how Southwest zigged when the industry zagged, and demonstrate how that has been financially successful because everybody, Wall Street said, you're leaving $600 million in fees on the table. And we said, but we think we can do better than that by getting people to choose us because we don't charge the fees. And in fact, we've seen a 1% market shift, which is about $1 billion. We've seen $1 billion more business come Southwest's way by not charging fees. That was the message strategy. So then everyone went back and said, okay, well, if I'm internal, external, and online, here are my opportunities to tell that story. So we tweeted about it, we shot the video, we put the video on the Nuts blog, we incorporated it into the news release, and we even did some behind the scenes video, so the making of, and we're able to use that as an opportunity to tell the story as well. And so then here's what some folks said about it. So a Swall Life comment, so this was from Seth Burris, one of our employees, who even said, this is fantastic, I love it. And I know the pilots don't always have to carry their flight bags anymore because everybody has them electronically now. But for those of us who do, could we have some Bags Fly Free stickers? Because we want to do free advertising. A customer who said, this is awesome, great customer service, free bags, open seating, super friendly staff. That's just somebody in the general public sort of responding at our Twitter handle. And then Nuts About Southwest, just Mark in Colorado, too funny and yet a serious reason to fly Southwest too. Also, the no change fee is awesome. And at the same time, we're turning more and more fans into Southwest fanatics. So this is Holly Hegeman. She has a publication called Plain Business Banter online. And she got a picture of our rampers. This is actually, so this is our CEO right here, Gary Kelly. This is our Senior VP of Marketing and Revenue Management who just spontaneously decided to bare his chest at the same time too. So you can see Holly's note here, nice blue boxers, Dave. But it's yet another way in which we were able to repurpose that story. So the story is Bags Fly Free. The message strategy is that we can make money by not charging nasty fees. And here's just another way we did it. So let's look at another case study now. This is when Southwest Airlines was going to launch. We have a number of specialty airplanes in our fleet. They tend to be painted with the seals of the flags from a particular state. So everybody knows we have Shamu, right? Painted like Shamu at SeaWorld. This is actually our latest specialty airplane to be introduced, and it's called Florida One. So here's an example of kind of how the communications team used their tools to make sure that we covered everything. Again, we had a making of video that we were able to use not only in our weekly news show, we were able to put it on our YouTube channel, and we were able to put it on our Nuts blog. We teased it on Twitter, where we talked about a great event that was coming up, and we just showed pictures. So we might have shown a piece of the airplane along with the, as a twit pic, along with the tweet. And then we also teased it in Facebook and on our blog. I bet you that video is not going to play either, but that was an example. You see how many views that has? Over 1 million? Over 1 million views, and that's just the making of video. So that is a very short video that we took in the paint shed at Boeing of the airplane actually being painted into the theme of Florida One. I think the whole thing is like 2.5 minutes. It's compressed, so it's in that sort of fast time. And we did it as just another way to demonstrate the story about our commitment to the state of Florida. So here the message strategy was, we serve 7 cities in the state of Florida. We've really built ourselves up to be a big intrastate Florida carrier. It was time to salute the state of Florida. And so we're going to unveil this airplane to show not only our economic but our community commitment to the state. And then a video was one of the tools in the tool belt. Yes, ma'am.
So the video and other videos like this, who makes these? Is it someone from the PR department, or do y'all have someone professional do it? Or?
So a little bit of everything. In the case of the making of Florida One, the actual video camera was set up inside the paint shed at Boeing, which is obviously a hazardous material site. So we weren't there, but we took the video they gave us and compressed it into 2.5 minutes, because they gave us 3 days of filming, because that's how long it takes to paint the airplane, and then did it all in quick time, brought it way down. In the case of this video, so this was a nasty news story that broke about 2 girls who were thrown off of a Southwest Airlines flight for cursing at flight attendants and throwing drinks. But what they told the news media was that we kicked them off because they were too pretty to fly. So this is one of our folks. So this is Brandy King, who's one of our senior managers in PR, who was providing a statement. And then this was one of our guys shooting it on staff. And we basically took it, and it was a little over a minute. And it was just our statement to defend ourselves of the decision we made to hopefully get the facts out there. We shot that to all of the news stations across the country, uploaded it to the YouTube channel, and it killed the story within a day. This is an example of consumer-generated media. This is literally an employee with a cell phone on board a flight who just recorded the flight attendant singing the safety announcements and having some fun with our Bags Fly Free messaging. This is us trying to be relevant. So everybody knows that different days or different times of year, there are different things that people search for, right? What you put in Google. So in the next few weeks, you might be putting top gifts for Christmas into Google. Everybody's always Googling for something different. Right before the summer travel, we did a video of what not to pack, because everybody always wonders, and particularly if you don't travel that often, what's the liquid ban? What should I take? What am I allowed to take? So we did a what not to pack video. This is for our green environmentalists. We actually do something called GE engine washing, where every night we wash our engines to get all the gook and the soot out of them, and that helps them burn cleaner fuel and burn less fuel. So we look, 161,000 views of an airplane engine being washed. There's nobody talking. There's nothing. It's like 4 or 5 or 3 minutes. There's a longer version. This is a 3-minute version of an engine being washed. So it's kind of crazy.
I have actually no questions.
Yeah.
Kind of minor. You said it burns cleaner and it burns less. Like, is it significantly less?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. That was.
Yeah, no, and we can talk. But no, so actually as we look at, so Southwest Airlines has a green strategy, and we talk about, now first of all, you have to understand every airline burns fossil fuel. There's no way around it. There is not a commercially viable alternative fuel yet that is neither affordable nor available in the quantity that we need it. Absent that, what are things that airlines can do to be more environmentally conscious? We actually have things on the ends of our airplanes called winglets. They're the things that pop up. That reduces what's called a vortex, which means that you can fly faster, burning less fuel. That's a 4% reduction in fuel burn. This gets us another 1 to 2% fuel burn. Yes?
Would you say that Southwest have y'all been the initiator of social media beside in front of other airlines? Do you think Facebook, Twitter, YouTube?
So definitely we were the pioneer because we had a corporate blog before any other airline even thought about doing it. Since then, there have been several other airlines that I think have done a really good job. The one that's probably been the most sustainable in the social space has been JetBlue. And I would say others have so American does a lot of social media monitoring, but most of that I think is to be aware of the problems that they have early on to be able to address them. Delta has a pretty robust, they just started something called Delta Assist, which is their Twitter handle, and that's more to help customers real time who are having issues in the airport. Their blog really is more about the historical environment around aviation. Virgin America tends to come and go on social media. When they have an event, they use it, and then they kind of drop off the cliff. But I would say that Southwest and JetBlue probably have the most sustainable social media strategy, that if you were to go out there, you would know who the personalities are who are responding in that space, and you'd see us out there, every single day, constantly. More about, so this is just some of the coverage from our Florida One unveiling that we did in Tampa. But again, we used a lot of different channels to kind of get that story out, both bloggers and traditional media. Had more than 600 social media mentions, and that was as a result of teasing it on Facebook and Twitter, and then also putting that making of video out there. And our employees, who are by nature aviation geeks, had a lot of fun with it too. So we had a number of different posts that we put on our SWA Life Interactive. So we were able to see there just within a day, so 76 comments, 47, 31, 71, those were all that day. So when we put a blog post up there, right away that was the number of comments that were coming in from employees, which is good. Again, that's a pretty high level of engagement when you consider we have 35,000 employees, most of whom are loading luggage, serving drinks, flying airplanes. So not necessarily sitting at a computer. That's pretty good activity. Then you can kind of see the blip we had, hearing from our fans in the social space. We had a spike of traffic on that day on our blog where we introduced the airplane in April. So this is a fun one. So here's another case study. Kevin Smith. Anybody not know who Kevin Smith is?
Everyone in the class has read the PRSA article.
Okay.
Or should have read it.
So February 13th, 2010, about 7:30, 7:45 at night, the Twitter sphere lights up with an unhappy customer who is tweeting from his gatehold area in Oakland, wanting to know why he can't get back on his flight to Burbank, and just starts with a whole bunch of tweets. And he was prolific. He has about 2 million, actually it says 1.6, he's got closer to 2 million followers on Twitter. So we learned about this from the Twitter sphere. That's how we learned that we had an issue, not from our own operation in Oakland, not from a traditional media source calling and asking about it, but from picking up on these tweets. Not only that we were seeing what he was writing, but we also had our own customers who follow us, so our 1.2 million Twitter followers going, hey, have you seen what that Kevin Smith is saying about you? What gives, what's going on? So we immediately tried to engage him personally by asking him to follow us so that we could direct message. Not because we didn't want to have the conversation here, but we didn't know what was going on. It was a Saturday night, and our Oakland station wasn't telling us that anything was wrong. For them to not be able to accommodate a passenger on a flight was not, an unusual situation, and they didn't know who this guy was, or what he was doing. So this is kind of the evolution of things. He started out, as you know, with multiple tweets. He then went to his Smodcast that he has. He does a number of podcasts and did several of those about Southwest. And I think all told he had over 100 different tweets, as I recall. But they started to get pretty profane. They started to get pretty profane. And here, there were a number of, because this is such a morbid curiosity type story about, are people too fat, in general, that there were a number of people.com, CNN.com, a number of different media organizations then started putting up polls, should Kevin Smith have been denied boarding? Would you want to sit next to somebody who you thought was too fat to fly, that kind of thing. So that's when he says, in a current CNN.com page poll, 58% of responders are on at Southwest Airlines. Guess it's time I shut up about this. The last blog is en route. And then you see that done. So he's blogged about it at silentbobspeaks.com. Good night, folks. Let's talk about anything else tomorrow. These are our attempts. So to ask that he follow us so we could direct message so we could get the details of what was happening. We had 3 phone numbers in our database for him. Again, remember, this is the weekend. So we were trying to contact him at the numbers that we had. Every phone number we tried, the voicemail, they were all for cell phones, and the voicemail boxes were full. So had a really hard time getting him by phone. Kind of had to regroup on Monday morning, and I finally did I was able to look up the studio phone number in Hollywood for him. Not necessarily my job to be talking to disgruntled customers, but based on the fact that he was a personality, a well-known personality, had engaged in the social space, we knew that we would be responding in the social space. I just wanted to talk to the guy. So I picked up the phone, I called the studio in Hollywood, someone answered the phone, I explained who I was and asked if he was available. And I'm sure she put down the phone thinking, is this a joke or is this really somebody from Southwest? So he gets on the phone. The conversation started out very cordially, explained who I was, why I was calling, and that we had been trying to contact him, in fact, since Saturday night when the incident first happened. He didn't believe me. He asked me to recite the phone numbers that we had tried. I repeated every one of them, and he admitted one was his wife's, one was his assistant's, one was his somebody else's. And so, yes, they were, in fact, all phone numbers that he had provided at some point. The bottom line was I was able to explain the captain didn't kick him off the airplane. I was able to explain that we made a mistake, that when he in fact had purchased 2 seats and there was one standby seat available on the flight that he wanted to, the earlier flight he wanted to take, we never should have put him on the airplane. Never should have put him on the airplane. But he talked his way onto the airplane, and I think we were trying to be helpful, got him on the airplane, clearly didn't fit, and then we had to take him back off, and that's obviously when things got ugly. So I admitted to him that was a complete mistake. We never should have done that. We would absolutely be looking at our standby clearance procedures to make sure that when someone needs a second seat to be accommodated, that we would make sure that that's how we handled it in the future. We refunded not only the flight that he was not able to take, we refunded the entire round trip, so the entire trip didn't cost him anything, just refunding that as a gesture of goodwill. And then I was able to recap the conversation in a blog post that we put on our Nuts About Southwest blog. Ultimately, what Kevin really wanted me to say to him was that I didn't think that he was so fat that he needed 2 seats. I think that is what was going to make him ultimately very happy. Well, I don't know the man. Never met the man, have never seen him in person. That wasn't there was going to be absolutely no way that I could say that. But that's really what he wanted, was that type of vindication. And unfortunately, I couldn't give it to him, so I don't know that he walked away completely satisfied. But I feel as though we were immediate, we were credible, we were transparent, and we responded in the same social spaces that he was using to engage the story in the first place. Anybody have any questions about that?
So how did your Twitter followers, how did they respond to that? Like were they concerned or were they angry? Like what effects did you see?
So in general, here's what we find about the social space. The first thing you get in the social space is emotion. You get that immediate gut reaction. And usually it can be if they don't agree with you, it can be pretty vitriolic. It can be pretty, you suck, I'm never going to fly you again, that kind of thing. And then what happens over time is reasoned thought tends to come into play, and then the arguments tend to become more rational. So you have to have a bit of a thick skin and an iron stomach if as a company you're going to engage in the social space, because the immediate reaction sometimes to things is going to be, I hate it, this is awful, I'll never fly you again. And then the people come in who go, well, would you really want to sit next to somebody like that? And could it be that they just made a mistake? And they refunded his money and apologized to him. So you can see where that's pretty much the cycle everything follows. Emotional first, rational second. So I would say that the people on our Twitter understood that we were absolutely trying to reach out to him and deal with this directly, that we were timely and transparent. We told everybody what was going on, that we were attempting to reach him, that we had made a mistake, that we'd refunded his money, and that we were looking at our policies to see how we could do better next time. And this kind of gives you the timeline there. So within 24 hours, we posted our first blog response. That was after my conversation with him. Actually, that was the first one to explain what had happened once we had the facts. And then when we were able to connect with Kevin, then we followed up with a second blog post. And then, boom. That's a high level of volume about one topic. Now, I would say that while this looks big and this felt very big to us, if you look at the first few days when either BP had the oil spill or Toyota had their giant recall, they were in the hundreds of thousands of clips. So just to kind of put it in scope. But this is kind of what our traffic looked like, and then it very quickly went back down. And I think in part we done all we could, and we said all we could, and we went out there very quickly with what we were going to try and do. Again, looking at the online media coverage, some of the trending topics. The two trending topics were our Twitter handle and his Twitter handle in terms of anything else. Now here's an interesting little, does everybody see this little tiny blip that says FAA? In March of 2008, the FAA decided to levy what was at the time, it is no longer, the highest fine against an airline for what they considered to be improper maintenance procedures. That was the $10.2 million fine levied against Southwest Airlines for inspections of fuselage skin for cracking and wearing. And we thought this was big. So we were dealing with that for a very long time in 2008. Look at the blip that happened versus the blip on Kevin Smith. FAA safety, Hollywood director too fat. That is an interesting statement on society, if nothing else, is it not? Fascinating. Fascinating. First of all, how much and how long it lasted. So, pretty interesting. That just kind of gives you some time perspective. Like I mentioned, it happened on that Saturday night, the 13th, and really by the end of the day on 15th, after I'd spoken to him and we'd put up that other blog post, the activity really did dip down. The rest of the world was done talking about it. Kevin wasn't done necessarily talking about it yet, but we were, and the rest of the world was too. The social space really drove the media coverage here. So obviously Twitter's where he started talking. So Twitter is where the majority, this micromedia is where the majority of the conversations took place. Obviously a lot of blogs started to talk about it and or repurpose our content once we had posted to the Nuts blog. And it did obviously then spill over into mainstream media. A lot of it was entertainment driven. So Perez Hilton, People.com, IMDb, all of those folks kind of talking about it, and even putting polls on their websites like the one you see in the upper right-hand corner. Should an airline be allowed to remove a passenger from a plane after boarding because they may be overweight? Interesting way to phrase the question, but 60% of the people said, yes, if it poses some kind of threat, I don't want to sit next to them. So really this is, the social space has really been redefining how we look at communication, and it caused us to take that real sort of step back and heads up look at communication and what was happening in communication. So it moved us away from sort of that siloed, I'm going to be a media spokesperson, or I'm going to be an event planner, or I'm going to be a blogger, or I'm going to focus on internal communication. And really what it meant was we needed effective communicators, we needed strong writers, we needed people, good strategists. So when you sit back and you look at what's happening either in the airline business or whatever kind of communication you want to go into, first message strategy, then focusing on how you're going to fill all these channels. Because today it's Facebook and Twitter, but what will it be tomorrow? It'll be something completely different tomorrow. Does everybody remember 6 or so years ago when everybody said, man, is it Second Life? Second Life is the bomb, everybody's going to go do it. And all of a sudden all these brands rushed to Second Life to figure out how they could possibly have an avatar community. And look where we are today, right? So kind of gives you some ideas of the dynamic nature. And so everybody know what word clouds are? So you can create a word cloud. You can go online anywhere, and you can build a word cloud about your particular brand, and it'll tell you the kinds of things that are being said about your brand in the online space in any given moment. So we did one. We went to some very specific blogs. So we went to academia, we went to communications, blogs like PR News and PRSSA, and kind of pulled this up, which felt good. So talking about convergence. Obviously, the more time the word is used, the bigger the word gets in a word cloud. So communications and media, we're being talked a lot about Southwest Airlines. Social, the fact that we have fans. Convergence felt real good, the employee focus. So it's kind of an interesting experiment to do when you go online, and you can plug anything in and just build a word cloud around it. But we're still sort of evolving this strategy. And I think the most important thing for our folks is to continue to learn how to be effective communicators. So while I have put them in places that are forcing them to have to flex some different muscles, because like I said, an internal communicator might not be used to writing news releases, or my online bloggers might not be used to writing for the employee magazine, they're all in there and they're stretching those muscles. And I think in another year, 18 months, if I keep them all, so the key's going to be retention, but I'm going to have a really well-oiled machine of effective communicators who can communicate across channels and across purposes, and who can really be good strategists, figuring out what it is we need to go do. So we've got a really big challenge ahead of us with, for instance, the AirTran integration and what that's going to look like, AirTran Airways, over the next 24 months. But I think we've redesigned and rebuilt the communications team to really be thinking in that regard. So with that, I don't know if you guys have any questions for me.
3:15, Linda, just to keep you posted.
Okay.
Anyone have a question? Anybody want to go work there now?
Yes, ma'am.
Is Kevin ever flown with Southwest again?
I don't know. I really don't know. We haven't gone in and checked. He would book reservations under Kevin Smith and Kevin P. Smith. Thank you. I honestly don't know. He said he wouldn't. I do know that shortly after that, he had a movie coming out. Can't remember, Cop Out? Can't remember the name of it. Maybe it was called, was that it? Yeah, Cop Out was the name of it. So he had a movie coming out shortly after that whole incident, and I do know that the studio did private planes for him to kind of get back and forth after that, obviously, but I don't know who he's flying these days.
He can afford it.
Yes, ma'am.
Have you had any other issues that you've had to deal with as a public relations in the field of like crisis?
Oh, lots, yeah.
What's the biggest one that you were initially just like, whoa, how am I going to handle this?
So probably the biggest one that I've been a part of for Southwest Airlines was on December 8th, 2005. We had an airplane that landed in a snowstorm in Chicago Midway. Chicago Midway Airport is not Chicago O'Hare. It's got very short runways, and so we landed long and hot, and we were running too fast and ran right out, went through the blast fence at the end of the runway and landed in an intersection. Now, miraculously, no one on board the airplane was hurt. However, when the airplane blasted through the blast fence, runways are fortified with about 15 feet of concrete in order to hold the weight of an airplane. Well, a street is not. As soon as that airplane nose gear hit the street, it sank, and when it sank, it fell on a car. The car it fell on had a family of 5 in it, and a 6-year-old boy was killed in that airplane, or in the car. So that was pretty intense. It was right before the holidays, and it was obviously very sad. It was the first time ever in Southwest history that it had been involved in an operational issue that resulted in a fatality. And so it was a very, I think, intense time for the communications team. Now, 2005, none of this existed, right? There was no Facebook, there was no Twitter, there was no blogging. So it probably simplified what we were doing, in that we were really dealing with the traditional media audience. We were dealing with our own employees, dealing with keeping the operation going. But I think just emotionally it was pretty intense. Now, last July, we had another operational issue. We had an airplane that, while in flight, about a piece about this big kind of peeled back from the top of the airplane in flight, so you could see daylight. And immediately had to go down to 10,000 feet. The oxygen mask deployed, and we had to do an emergency landing in a city that we don't serve, which was Charleston, West Virginia. So that's awkward. You land in a city you don't serve. You really have to rely on the kindness of the airport that's there and the other airlines employees who happen to work there. So we had that going on, and no one was hurt. Thankfully, obviously we had to figure out what was going on with the airplane. But that was in a time last July when all of the social media channels were alive and well. And so once you make a commitment that you're going to be in those spaces, you can't back up. It's not like you can suddenly say, oh, don't tweet about that, or no, we can't engage in that space. You have to. So I think it was about an hour into the incident, the first thing that popped up about it was a twit pic of somebody who had taken a picture of the hole in the airplane, and then one shortly followed that somebody had taken a picture of themselves with the oxygen mask on. So, I mean, that's our new world. That is our new reality. That's how people are going to find out. That's sometimes how we're going to find out about big news, is that something's going to come along in one of the social media channels before our own dispatch operations even has a chance to tell us about it. But fully transparent and speed. Speed is probably the biggest change in communication for us. There's not that luxury of, the reporter calls you at 2 o'clock and you have till 5 to get back to him because it's not running until tomorrow. There's no more of that. There is about 10 minutes, and then he's going to go and say, could not be reached for comment. So you have to move really, really fast in this day and age. Yes, ma'am.
So when that all happened with the little boy's family, how did y'all respond?
Well, I mean, we have an entire crisis response plan. Basically, it was to work with the police and fire department to make sure that everybody got off that airplane and then back to the airport and then off to where they needed to be. Some of them wanted to continue their journey. Some decided they didn't want to travel. Some wanted to be put on other airlines. You had to make all those arrangements. So the first concern was really for the customers who were on board that airplane, as well as what was happening with the Woods family, and then working with them. But there is an entire team of people who are trained to respond in a number of different ways, whether it's working with the airport to keep the operation running, if it's working with what we call the care team. So the care team works with anything that's happening on the ground or anything that's happening with our employees or customers on board the airplane. We followed the plan. Basically, our CEO flew to Chicago. We did a series of news conferences and interviews. We offered to set somebody up with the Woods family. We paid for the funeral. There's a whole number of things we do. We set up a scholarship fund for the remaining children. There's a number of different things that we did. But yeah, really sad.
So you'll never hire an outside crisis PR firm to manage the crisis. It's all internal.
That's a great question. So we do use outside PR counsel, but that's just what they're for. They're to help us think about these. We would never just part and parcel hand off the response effort to an outside company. We wouldn't do that. We actually do work with a PR firm out of Cleveland, Ohio called Dixon Eaton, and Dixon Eaton does help us develop and think through strategy, but then it's our folks who are the face of Southwest Airlines and the ones who are responding.
So when that happened in Chicago, and you're from your office in where is it?
Dallas.
Dallas. How are you immediately responding? Like, are you calling the agents in the Chicago airport, and how do you get in touch with the people you need to get in touch with as fast as you need to get in touch with them?
Well, it's whether it's texting or cell phone or whatever it is, there are already people in every one of our Southwest cities who are identified and trained to respond. So, for instance, but sometimes you got to see who's on duty. So this was a Thursday night in December, as I recall, and we basically had to see who was at the station who could respond. So somebody who could immediately set up the friends and family room for people who might be meeting people, or needing to get back to the family members who are on board that airplane. We needed someone who could corral and respond to the news media with the information that we knew it. We need somebody who could be the liaison to the police and the fire departments. So we kind of went back and forth, and basically everybody went and followed their pre-assigned and predetermined duties. Mm-hmm. Yes, sir.
I was wondering, I know that I've had to do a lot of Twitter, Facebook stuff with my job, and I've found the hardest thing is just putting out things that people actually care to read. What are some of the things you guys have done to kind of keep people interested in coming back and keep people, wanting to follow your tweets and wanting to look at the Facebook page and kind of helping bring actual interest to it?
Relevancy. So being relevant is probably the most important thing for us. So the people who follow us on Twitter and the people who follow us on Facebook are looking for, sometimes they're looking for deals and offers, right? They want kind of the heads up that we're having a great fair sale, or that some new city is going to be opening, a new destination. They love the operational update. So if we've got a part of the country that's really being affected by horrible rainstorms or a nor'easter or something like that, being able to put information out that says, be sure you check your flight status before you head to the airport if you're in these cities. They love hearing about, because they tend to be a more tech-savvy crowd, any gadgets or functionality. So when we introduced a new way to package hotels and rental cars on the website, they were interested in that. When we came out with the iPhone app for Southwest Airlines, they gobbled that right up. And then we are installing wireless Wi-Fi on all of our airplanes. And so when we can put out a status update or a tweet about the tail numbers of the airplanes that have Wi-Fi, so as a traveling customer if your airplane's going to have Wi-Fi or not, it's being relevant. It's being what they care about. And so some of it is digging in. Sometimes you can just do, remember when I talked about Google Juice? Some of it is just putting in and seeing, go to Alexa or Word Tracker and see what some of the hot things are that people are searching for. Like 2 weeks before Halloween, it's the hottest Halloween costumes. Well, I don't know if you know Southwest Airlines, but we do Halloween big every year, and our CEO is dressed up as Billy Gibbons from ZZ Top. He's dressed up as Edna Turnblad from Hairspray. He's dressed up as Dorothy from The Wizard of Oz. He's been Jack Sparrow, and he's been Gene Simmons from Kiss. So a couple weeks before Halloween, when everybody's Googling, hey, what Halloween costumes, we can put content out and say, what will Gary Kelly be this year? Check out his new costume. Well, costume picks up the Google juice, and suddenly we're relevant. But that's probably the biggest thing you could do is find out what people are talking about already and join that conversation, be relevant. Yes, ma'am.
So how long have you worked for Southwest, and how long did it take you to go basically from graduating or starting out to getting to the level that you are?
Well, I've learned everything that I know about communication at Southwest Airlines, because my degree, as Stuart mentioned, was in journalism. So print and magazine journalism, and I did that for several years before I went to work for Southwest as a public relations coordinator in 1992. So I've been there a little over 18 years, and in 18 years just kept growing and changing along with the department as it has grown into the leadership position. So it's been a while. People probably tend to move around more than I did, I guess. But I happened to work for a company that kept giving me those new opportunities. Sometimes people leave because they want to go pursue that new opportunity they don't think they can do right there. And my boss just never said no. So, hey, what would it be if we did a television show on A&E called Airline? Okay, so it's like, great. And they went, well, what would it be if we started a corporate blog? Not too much risk, I'll manage it. Okay. So my boss just never told me no, so I never went anywhere because I kept getting the opportunities to continue to tell that Southwest story in new and different ways. So I just pray she never says no. I'll stay there. Yeah.
What do you find most challenging?
I think with the speed at which things are moving now, it's making sure that the staff doesn't burn out. There's so much to keep up with. I mean, I've got people right now who willingly do 24-hour duty. And I don't mean that they're up for 24 hours, but they have, they've got a device that they're monitoring. So if something, if a tweet pops up that we have to respond to, if something's going wrong in a particular city, they're ready to engage and, get the right people in order to respond. But, that can get kind of wearying if you have to do it time and time again at 2 o'clock, 2:30 in the morning. So I think that's the thing I worry about most. We work hard, but we play hard at Southwest Airlines. So try to make sure that there's a good balance of that. And whenever we can, we remember to celebrate and reward and have good times. But I think that's probably the thing that I get most concerned about, making sure that with everything that's going on that people don't burn out.
I promised Miss Rutherford she has to leave at 3:30. She has to drive back to Memphis, bless her heart, and get on another airplane. So let's give her a great round of applause. You guys take a 15-minute break, and then we have a lot more to do, so be sure to come back.